Well, thank you all for coming out tonight. We sure appreciate you coming here, hoping to learn a little bit about solar and how Paulding Putnam interacts with those that want to interconnect with us. We've got a couple of our staff members here that are going to hopefully give you all the information you would need to get started. So here's just a quick agenda. I'm going to start, just give you some general background. And then Peter's going to come up. Peter's our energy advisor, Peter Niagu. He's going to go through a bunch of the cost and payback kind of information. And then Steve Colley is our engineering manager, and he's going to go through the engineering standards and interconnection requirements. We try and hold these meetings, and this is our second solar meeting. We've had a couple other informational meetings, but these are really here to help you all make the best decision for you. You know, when you're looking at one of these types of installations, every house is different, everybody's usage pattern is different, and a lot of people's motivation for doing things are different as well. You know, at your house, you may want to just be reducing your electric bill. That may be your main motivation. Myself, I may be interested in, I want renewable because I think it's great for the environment. And I don't care if I'm going to save money or not. So everybody's still a little bit different. So we want to help you make the best decision for you. Okay? And your house is going to be different than my house, than your neighbor's house. So we really want to look at your house, your application, and what your goals are. And again, we want to be open and transparent about our rates, our rate design, how we do things, how we interconnect, all of that. So this is the opportunity for you to ask us questions. And again, we encourage anybody to come into our office, stop in anytime, and we're always here to help you out. Okay, so first and foremost, as a utility, we understand that we get a bad rap for not supporting renewable energy. And that's really not the case for us. We are a proponent of what they call an all of the above generation strategy. We want to make sure that your lights come on when you want them to come on. We have demonstration units right out front here, both wind and solar. We can model those to your house so you can see exactly what units of those size would actually do at your home. And that's real data. It's not data that's from a spec sheet. That's real data coming right off those units. One of the things we really want to stress is you need to remember that if you're going to be generating power and selling it back through us onto the grid, you are taking on some responsibility as a utility. So there is some risk there. The guys are going to go through some of the interconnection requirements. Those are very important. When you're putting power back out there, if there's a problem within your system, you put power back on our lines, there is a potential hazard out there for individuals to get injured or, worst case, killed. So you definitely want to make sure you understand what those risks are and what the safety components are that you have to have installed on your system. And you want to check with your insurance carrier to see if there's some insurance that you may be able to get to help with that. And that is not an easy thing, I'll tell you that. You know, one of the things in our mission statement, we put this in, it's been in our mission statement for a number of years because we recognize that the future of generation, of electricity, of actually serving your home is changing. So we understand that, and one of our goals is to be responsible to you as members with sustainable energy solutions. And that's why we have these experts here, Peter, Steve, on staff, to help you out. So anytime you want to call them, come in, they're here to help you out. There's no denying the last bullet point on there. You know, the Ohio utilities, and predominantly Indiana utilities, and certainly the co-ops in both states, we're coal-based generation. You know, we are. There's just no denying that. We do have renewable energy in our portfolio, but it is a smaller percentage. And part of that reason I'll talk about in a minute but we've invested a lot of money in our coal plants, and they're operating at a high level. So to just not use them doesn't make financial sense. So we do have to understand that we are coal-based. We don't deny that. We're not trying to cover any of that up, but we are trying to make sure we maximize that investment, because you all are paying for it on your electric bill, right? So we want to make sure we maximize that as we transition to whatever the new renewable future is. So as you know, we get all of our power from Buckeye Power. That's our generation and transmission cooperative. They are owned by the 24 co-ops in Ohio. So Paulding Putnam, we own 1/24 roughly. A little bit more than that because we're a little bigger than some of the other co-ops, but 1/24, which means you as members have that indirect ownership. So we own our own supply. We own all of our own generation. We control that generation. And just as a brief history to tell you, so you understand where we got to the point we're at today, being a coal-based utility. Back years ago in the late 60s into the early 70s, the co-ops were growing so much, they had to have their own power supply. Because back before that, all they did is they just go out to one of AEP's lines, one of I&M's lines, and tap onto that line and start serving houses in the service territory. Well, as the growth happened, we had to have our own supply. So Buckeye Power was formed in order to supply the cooperatives. So we built a coal plant. It's down in Brilliant, Ohio, just north of St. Clairsville, kind of between Wheeling and St. Clairsville area down there, Steubenville. We built a unit, and AEP built a unit with us. So they own one unit, we own a unit right beside that. As the co-ops in Ohio grew, we built a second unit for our own use, Unit 3. So the Cardinal Station, some of you may have been down there on a tour, the Cardinal Station has 3 units. One's owned by AEP, one's owned, and 2 are owned by us. Buckeye Power operates all 3 units for the utilities. So they operate for us and AEP. Back then in the 70s, when all this was going on, coal was really the only viable resource. The federal government had actually banned the use of natural gas for electric generation back in the 70s. If you remember back, some of that stuff back in the 70s, we didn't think there was enough natural gas to get us very far into the future, so it was actually banned for quite a few years for generation. So at that same time, there's a lot of bad stuff going on in the nuclear generation, so that wasn't really a viable option, and even today that's really not a viable option because of the cost. So coal was all we had left. So utilities built coal plants. Now coal plants are actually designed to operate indefinitely, as long as they're maintained and kept up to date. Our units have that. We've maintained them, we've kept them up to date, we've installed all of the pollution control, all the environmental controls that have been mandated. So several years ago when the coal plant closures started, that was because a lot of those older plants had not installed pollution control stuff for, I believe it was 2012 was the deadline, but that got extended a couple times because you know how that government works. But anyway, that's why they were closing. They were closing because they didn't meet the standards. When all of this discussion was going on several years ago, where the EPA had a bunch of the stuff where they were actually going to close plants, the Cardinal units were actually identified as by EPA to operate longer because they had already been what we call scrubbed. So they're already the cleanest they can be. So the EPA recognized that. So we don't really have any need to close those plants. They're operating at a high level. They meet all the standards today. So there's really no need to get rid of it. It's kind of like if you owned a car that you would invest a lot of money in, and you want to get another car, but you still had a loan on this car, right? Well, that money's got to get transferred somewhere, right? Well, people that own Buckeye Power, which is all of us in this room as members, have a big investment down there, and we just can't walk away from that. And as long as that plant is operating at a high level, there really is no need to. Because at the high level that they operate at, that cost is competitive to any kind of new installation, whether that's the large wind turbines or large solar fields that they're installing now. So that's just a little history about how we got to be a coal utility. The next thing is, in order to secure the loans that Buckeye had to have to install the scrubbers and install the pollution control, which actually cost more than the plant's cost originally, they had to take out a lot of long-term debt, close to $1 billion. Well, they do that based on the strength of the 24 co-ops that own them, which is us. Okay, so we have a long-term, all requirements contract that secures Buckeye Power. So what that means is Paulding Putnam on their own cannot go out and buy or build their own generation. We're not allowed to do that, again, because of these long-term contracts. So we're kind of locked into that. But again, as members, we do own and we do control that generation. Okay, so we'll get into a little rate design philosophy. So first thing is, when we're talking about rates, we have to think about all the members, not just members that are large power users, small users, people that want renewable energy, that don't want renewable energy. We have to think of everybody, right? And so one of the things we have to consider is, systems like renewables, they're on, off, working, not working. That really doesn't impact us because we have to have connection, supply, regardless. Because you want your power on 100% of the time, right? Whether it's your own renewable energy or energy from us, right? So we have to be available and ready 100% of the time. And we have to have the capacity 100% of the time, which means we have to have a transformer sitting out there that's energized, ready to serve your home. We have to have a substation that's receiving energy, that's ready to supply your home. So that's the first consideration when we're designing rates, is we have to be able to meet your needs whenever you need it, right? Doesn't matter how much. If your units are running, say you're generating some solar and you're using it, so you're buying less from us, well, when the sun goes down, your usage may go up. We have to be ready to supply that all the time, whenever. You may take your unit offline to do some work. We have to supply that. We have to be ready. So we have to have our system capable all the time. Next bullet there, the energy credits. Those come directly from Buckeye. As I said before, since we have a power delivery agreement with Buckeye Power to buy all of the power from them, any generation that goes through our system, goes out, is actually purchased by Buckeye Power. So they buy it technically from us, and then we credit you back. So that's how that works, right? So it actually runs through our power bill every month from Buckeye. We get a charge for whatever energy is generated by all the solar units that we have installed, and then we get a credit back that goes back to you. And again, when we talk about fair cost recovery, when we look at the electron, the actual electricity that you use at your house that comes from Buckeye, we don't look at that as something we want to earn margin on, because we're we're not building to replace that, right? What we want to earn margin on is the distribution side, which is all of the facilities from our substation to your house that we use to serve you, right? And again, that's got to be available 100% of the time whenever you need it. So we want to have our margin because that's the equipment that wears out over time, right? That's the poles that after so many years have to be replaced. That's the wire that has to be replaced. There's millions of little pieces of hardware between that generating plant and your house that fail every day. And those have to be fixed, they have to be replaced. We have to have a systematic maintenance program to replace and upgrade that stuff before it breaks, hopefully, right? So that's what the service charge on your bill is for. That's what that recovers. The energy then just becomes a pass-through. So whatever we pay Buckeye is what you pay. So that's our long-term, that's our goal. If you look at your bill, several years ago we separated the bill out, generation, transmission, distribution. It works out about 70-30. These two components, the generation, transmission, roughly 70%, maybe 65%, depending on your usage. And then the distribution cost is 30-35%. That's roughly how it works. But you can look at your bill. Net metering, we do not. That's one of the things that we do not support that. That concept has been out there a long time, for as long as renewables have been out there. And basically what net metering means is the meter runs forward whenever you're buying electricity from us, right? Whenever you're using from us, the meter runs forward. Whenever you're generating power, it runs backwards. So in effect, what happens is your meter gets decreased at the actual cost to us, which is not the credited cost that you get back. So what happens is the net metering actually is at the full retail rate instead of the wholesale cost of the power. So that would include all of the distribution costs that we're talking about in that credit. So that's why we don't support that. And the analogy that I usually use on that is, if you go out and buy a chicken because you want some fresh eggs, and that chicken starts laying eggs, and now all of a sudden you got more eggs than you can use, so you take them to the grocery store and say, I have extra eggs, I'd like to sell them to you. The guy at the grocery store doesn't pay you the same price that he sells eggs for, right? He says, okay, I'll buy your eggs, I'll buy them at the same price I buy them from my egg wholesaler, right? I don't sell them, if I sell eggs for $1, I'm not gonna pay you $1 for your eggs. I'm gonna pay you something less than that. I'm gonna pay you what my wholesaler does. So that's how we do it. So basically, how it works is whenever your units are on and generating, 100% of that energy is used at your home, so you're not buying from Paulding Putnam. If you have excess, that comes through our system, then goes out and is purchased by Buckeye, and you get credit for that from Buckeye Power. So you get 100% of the value for what you use in your home all the time. You always use what you generate first before you buy from us. And now I'm going to turn it over to Peter. He's going to go into a little more on how this all works.
Thank you, George. As George said, I'm the energy advisor here, and primarily my responsibility here is anything that has to do with energy efficiency, energy conservation, that falls on my plate, that falls on my lap. And renewable energy falls on that, or falls on my plate from this perspective. So when you look at this conservation pyramid, this is essentially a blueprint of what you should do or how you should start conserving energy or making your home more energy efficient, per se. Okay. Now, how this works is, when you look at the bottom of this pyramid, at the bottom of this pyramid, it is essentially low cost or no cost energy efficiency upgrades that doesn't cost you much, but it's really easy to do and not a whole lot of investment, okay? So for example, understanding, like right now, this conversation we're having is part of understanding, okay, this concept, okay? This is the rock bottom, this is where you start, okay? And as you can see, when you start going up this pyramid, the complexity in the investment increases. So, for example, low cost, no cost, energy efficiency stuff. For example, well, lighting is the next one up there, but you know, changing out your light bulbs in your house, it doesn't cost you a whole lot, and you've got pretty good return on the investment, meaning it costs you very little, but the savings are really good, really high. So lighting is the next one there. Air sealing, okay, that coincides with essentially insulating. So now once you start going higher on this pyramid, the cost goes up more, the complexity goes up, which means essentially the return starts to get stretched out further, okay? If you look up here next, insulating and ventilation, okay, appliances, insulating, ventilation, water heating. Okay, so the further you go up on this, the more expensive things are going to cost, the longer the payback is, essentially I'm not going to say the worse or the investment is worse or it's not as good. It just takes a lot longer to see the return. You can see here a heating and cooling system is next, windows, and then the last one is renewable energy. This is a good prime example of what you want to do at your home if you want to reduce your energy use at your house. So by the show of hands, how many people here would be interested in getting a solar system for reducing their electric use at their house? Okay, well, that's essentially what everyone says, okay? It's not everybody. You have some people that don't do it for reducing power, but there are some out there. At any rate, what we have to do here is understand that there is a tremendous cost, you know, when you don't essentially follow these steps in order. So the big thing is try to do what you can in this order. Low cost, no cost, all the way up to more expensive. You know, really, on the heating and cooling system, you could essentially save 20-30% on your electric bill a year by upgrading that. So just think about those things first, and you could see a return much sooner, I would say, than putting in windows in your new house or in a house and or renewable energy. Okay, so that's just, you know, I wanted to start down at the foundation level of what this conservation pyramid means and how we're going to go through these slides. Okay, the next slide here is, how do solar panels work? Well, it's pretty simple. When the sun shines onto the solar panel, energy from the sunlight is absorbed by the photovoltaic cells in the panel. This energy creates electrical charges that move in response to an internal electrical field in the cell, causing electricity to flow. It's a very simple explanation, it's a very simple definition, but it tells you everything you need to know. Okay? Okay, so the NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, did a really good study in 2000, well, early 2000, but this was published in 2006. What you're looking at here is, this chart here is essentially, it's showing by state a comparison of solar power potential, okay? In other words, how good is solar power in each state, I guess the way to break it down. And what they did was, the sun index is defined as an index of the amount of direct sunlight received in each state and accounts for latitude and cloud cover. The amount of direct sunlight was derived from numbers provided by the National Rural Energy Laboratory Renewable Resource Data Center. The sun index was calculated as the average number of hours of peak direct sunlight hours per hour from 1960 to 1990. And this is important because I want to show you, right up here is the state of Ohio in terms of solar potential. It's the third worst state in all of the 50 states of this country. And then Indiana is, I think, the 13th worst. So it's just not great. There isn't great sun in this area, in the general vicinity, in the Midwest area. And why am I bringing this up? Well, how is solar viable in our area? Why in the world are people putting in solar panels everywhere if the solar potential is not very good in Ohio? Well, it's pretty simple. Over the last 10 years, the cost of solar installations, the cost of solar in general, has gone down 64%. Okay? In 2010, the cost per watt installed was $7.53. You can see that right here. Fast forward, 10 years later, it's about $2.71 right here per watt installed. Now, today it's a little bit less than that. In our area, they range between $2.40 per watt to $2.50 per watt. Depending on your application and if it's residential or commercial. Generally speaking, the larger you go, the more cost effective it is. At any rate, I just wanted to show you this graph because it just shows you how much we've come in 10 years in terms of cost. That's why it's starting to make a lot more sense in our area in terms of cost versus savings, and the return on the investment is worth it. Okay, so net metering versus net billing. So George was speaking earlier on net metering. The definition is, under net metering, the solar energy which is a member generates for themselves is metered so that any excess electricity which is generated can be banked, like think rollover data on your cell phone plan, to the member's account for future consumption. Well, the co-op doesn't do that. That is not our practice. What we do here at the co-op is net billing. So net billing, on the other hand, allows solar members to generate electricity for personal use and sell any excess energy to the utility company like us at wholesale or the avoided cost, which is the Buckeye Power cost. We'll go over that in a minute. While purchasing power at the retail rate. So I'll explain that a little bit more going forward. So this slide is residential rate going to a net billing rate. So I'm going to assume that everybody here is on a standard residential rate with Paulding Putnam Electric. And if you are, what your rate looks like is this right here, this top portion. The service charge per month, which is $32.95, that's a fixed cost. Okay, that doesn't change from month to month. That's there every single month, whether you use 1 kilowatt hour or a million kilowatt hours. Well, not a million, but a lot. So that cost is essentially, it's a fixed cost to pay for our system, equipment, material, that kind of thing. And then below that is our distribution energy charge per kilowatt hour. It's less than 2 cents. And then our G&T energy charge is 8 cents. Combined, we're paying roughly 10 cents per kilowatt hour. You guys are all paying roughly 10 cents per kilowatt hour if you're on our standard residential rate. Now, if you go with a solar system, you'll go to our residential net billing rate, which the biggest differences are here the service charge goes up 20 bucks at $52.95, yet the total energy charge per kilowatt hour goes down to 8.3 cents from 10 cents. And any excess buyback is at 5.7 cents. That's the avoided cost. That's what would come back onto our lines. That's what Buckeye Power would buy back from you guys. So this is a good snapshot of what it would look like now, what it looks like now, and what it would look like if you do go with a solar system. This is very critical. The reason why I'm explaining this is because I would say 9 out of 10 solar customers that we connect don't have a clue that this is happening. They just don't. So they're surprised, I guess. It's no loss. You're not gaining or losing anything. It's the service charge goes up because there's increased responsibility and increased cost. And then what we did was we just lowered the kilowatt hour charge essentially. So it's essentially flat. Okay. This next graph is solar usage patterns. This is a 24-hour period here. This graph here is depicting 24-hour period of solar output, okay, this blue line, and home usage, this orange line. As you can see, you're always really using power from us, but at night, the solar system is not really generating anything until the sun starts to come up, okay, and you can see, okay, this is a typical day here in Ohio, I guess you could say. So this is important too because my next slide will explain to you how the net billing portion of how your system pays for itself, I'm going to explain. So when you use power from the co-op, right here, okay, this blue portion here is using power from the co-op. And then when the sun starts to go up, you can see solar being generated right here. And then this dark orange part where your home would be using electricity, your house is using that power from your solar system that you are generating. Okay? So if you are actually generating more than what your home is using, then the solar, this is the solar that PPEC will start purchasing. These right here, this graph is showing power right here during the day. That power is coming back onto our system. All the while you are using all of the power that your solar array is generating. When the sun starts to go down, kilowatt hours being used from the co-op right here in blue again. So this is important too because I'm going to start talking about paybacks and how that system can pay for itself. So this is a typical scenario for net billing with Paulding Putnam Electric. Okay. Now, this slide might look a little intimidating, or it might look like a lot of numbers, or you can't see it very well, but this is a net billing example of a 12-month electric consumer, a member of ours, that would have a solar array system, for example, connected to us, obviously built at their home, taking power from the home and putting back onto our grid. So basically, if you guys can follow me here, this row right here is a theoretical about 12 kW system that has been installed on this member's home. Okay, these are actual kilowatt hours that the house is using, okay? So for the month of January, your theoretical generation, your solar system that you have outside your house, in your yard, generated 510 kilowatt hours. All the while, the house used 859 kilowatt hours. Okay, you see that second row? Well, the third row is the total solar that you got, that you sold to Paulding Putnam, or that we received, okay, from you, of over excess generation, which is nothing, okay? Because you actually netted 1,349 kilowatt hours. Okay, so you used 1859, your solar system generated 510, you used all of that up, and it netted it to 1349 kilowatt hours, and that's what you paid for. February, your home solar array system generated 1,028 kilowatt hours. The house would have used 2,467. You sold none back, but you netted, or what your house eventually ended up using after your system generated this was $1,439. So that looked like $52.95 plus $119.44 for $1,439 at 8.3 cents per kilowatt hour. Total bill was $172.39. Okay, you can see going forward. Let's go to a month of, like the month of April. And by the way, guys, these kilowatt hours right here in this row it's an actual system that's generating this many kilowatt hours in our area. So for the month of April, 1402, the house only used 1262. That's a difference of 140. So that means that's negative 140 kilowatt hours. So the $52.95 service charge plus a credit of $7.98, which gives you a bill of $44.97. Okay, follow me? Go on, keep on going here. So once September rolls around, October, the sun doesn't shine as long anymore and there isn't as much solar potential in November and December. You can see what happens. You generated less and your solar system, or the house used a little bit more, generated less, and this is the outcome. This is what your bill is. So this system here is sized exactly at, well, almost 80%. This is an 80% size system. This is what we look for. This is the sweet spot is between 60 and 80%. And this system is exactly 80%. Okay, so assume a home that uses 15,000 kilowatt hours, which is roughly about the average consumer on our system, how much they use on average per month over a 12-month period. You install a 10 kW DC system. A 10 kW DC system will generate roughly 12,000 kilowatt hours a year, or about 80% of the home's usage. Okay? Install cost is about $2.50 per watt DC, which is equal to roughly $25,000. And then after there's a 26% tax credit right now, it brings your cost down to roughly $18,500. That's a federal tax credit of 26%. So we're going to assume our retail rate, which this is our rate, our retail rate. If you go to net billing, it's 8.3 cents per kilowatt hour. The avoided cost is 5.7 cents. This is the rate that George was talking about, Buckeye Power. This is our pass-through wholesale power cost. So if that 10 kW system that I just described here at a 15,000 kilowatt hour a year home, if 7% of the solar kilowatt hours are sent back to the grid, then you should see, this is what you should expect in terms of solar values. Okay, if we go back a few slides right here, this part right here, this is what is going to be paying for your system. This is your solar value, okay? And the solar value here, 7% of 12,000 kilowatt hours is 840 kilowatt hours, credited at 5.7 cents. That's 47.88, or 93% of the 12,000 is 11,160, valued at 8.3 cents, which is 926.28. And the total annual solar value, this is what your total annual solar value is right here, under $1,000. So if you do simple payback, it's 18.9 years on a $18,500 system with just the 26% tax credit. I'm not familiar with what other incentives there are, if there are any others, but this is just a simple payback. This is an example. So this is what you should expect a system to generate. So here, let me go back a second here. Your objective should be that you want to use all the kilowatt hours that your system generates because it is valued at 8.3 cents, not 5.7 cents. Okay? That return will be, it'll happen much more quickly if you use all these kilowatt hours and not sell them to us at 5.7 cents. That's the moral of the story here. Okay, so step-by-step process if you do want to go with this system here. Before choosing a solar system, be sure your home is as energy efficient as possible. Look, if you can reduce your energy costs at your house 30%, 20% by implementing energy efficiency upgrades like, having me come to your house and do an energy audit and tell you how and where you should improve your home for 20% or 30% savings, you can install a system 30% smaller. Okay? When you're talking thousands of dollars, that makes a big difference. It just makes all the sense in the world. So investing in energy efficiency provides a faster return on your investment. Things like we were talking about on that pyramid. Sometimes, not sometimes, almost every time insulating and air sealing, lighting, that stuff will make a return on your investment much more quickly than a solar system. You will reduce your overall energy use, and you may reduce the size of the PV system that you put in if you do that. Okay, make sure the roof is at your house is in tip-top shape. A lot of people don't think about this. If you do put a PV array in your home, on your roof, by golly, that system can last 30 years up there, potentially outlasting a roof. So make sure you think about that, because that's... Okay, the next step would be to research solar and solar contractors thoroughly before investing in a system. Here at the co-op, we try to be neutral, okay? We don't recommend any company, okay? We're not here to say, yes, pick them or don't pick them. We're just here to give you information, and you guys really have to do the research on your end and on what kind of contractor that you want to use. And really, I think the best thing that you can do is, if you know someone that has a system, just simply ask them if they're happy with the contractor that they use, or if they're happy with what they did, if they're happy with what it's producing and what it's generating, and is it what they expect, what you expect. So that is probably by far the best way to go in terms of getting recommendations. Just ask someone that has a system. Get 3 quotes, that's pretty standard. Work closely with the co-op for advice and assistance with interconnecting to the grid. And generally speaking, the co-op, we can, with a click of a button or two, we can give you your whole history with us that we have on file from when we started keeping track electronically. Call the cooperative before you go forward with the project, so you have a complete understanding. I said this a few minutes ago, you'd be surprised at how many people I talk with every time that the system goes in and we start discussing, their first bill comes out and, arms up in air, and they don't have a clue how we net bill, that we don't actually net meter, and why does it look so different. So just call us, okay? We just want to be sure you guys understand what's happening at all times. So when you decide who you want to use, send in the proper application filled out properly or completely. We have that on our website. We actually have a really, really good renewable energy page on our website that has a lot of information. Okay, you guys can go on there anytime. It's open to whoever wants to go on there. There's a lot of really good stuff, a lot of links to just really good information. Frankly, a lot of the people that I talk with every day, if they would just go to our website and read all that, they wouldn't have many questions for me, but maybe that's not a good thing. No. There is an application fee if you guys want to put a system on and connect with our system. There's a $375 application fee that you would send in with your application. That gets us to work. That gets Steve and myself doing stuff around here for this system. After we receive the application and the processing fee, the cooperative will review the last 3 years of your energy use, confirm that it falls within our 80% guideline. We'll preview the 3.5 or the 3 previous years and give you an average, and we are talking averages on predictable loads only. Now, in other words, what that means is if we can look at your energy use and your energy use is pretty consistent every month, we can predict what you're going to use. If you have a barn, like maybe a grain operation, and you use kilowatt hours once or twice or 3 times a year, that's not predictable. So we do things a little differently for that type of system. But 80% last 3 years average on predictable loads. I give that to engineering. He does a small impact study to make sure that our equipment can handle the kilowatt hours coming back onto our system. And if everything works great, you can start construction. Interconnect agreements must be completed, filled out, sent in to me, and I work closely with the dealer. Generally speaking, you, the member, will never have to see any of this paperwork. If you're getting a contractor to do this work for you, they handle all the paperwork on the back end. Which is actually the fun stuff. After completion, PPDC will make a site visit to test, disconnect, and exchange the meter to a bidirectional meter, which Steve will discuss, I think, a little bit later, and then your project is done. Okay, Steve is going to come up next to talk about his section.
All right, so when you guys decide to get a solar array installed, you don't have to go through a dealer, but you still have to go through the same qualifications that we expect in the application. So I'm going to go through this step by step, try to run through this a little quickly so we can get to you guys' questions. But going through what are some of our requirements. And then also I'm going to talk about how we, through the install process, some of the inspections that we do before it's online. So in an application, what we want to see is we want to see a site layout. We want to see where the solar panels are, how it's going to get interconnected. It doesn't have to be like this. It doesn't have to be in like an AutoCAD drawing. If you're doing it yourself, you can draw it on a piece of paper. We just kind of want to know proximity of where this is going to be at, the number of panels, and then where your meter is located and how you plan on interconnecting to it. So another example would be this layout as well. You can see on the this is a house. I'm assuming that's a garage. You can see where the solar panels are at. Down here, that's where the meter, and that's where the disconnects and all the integrations happening on it. The next diagram we want to see is we want to see how you have this all designed as far as interconnecting. How is it wired up? Gotta go back. You can see we got the solar panels over here. It's going to go into an inverter, and then eventually to a disconnect, and then into your panel, and then back to the meter. We want to make sure that it's wired properly, and I'll get into that detail in just a little bit. But these are some of the things that we were inspecting in the application. You can't really see it, but these little red squares, that's labeling. I'll discuss that here in a little bit. Labeling of what everything is out in the field or at your home is very important. Next thing in the application, we do want to see what manufacturer you got on the solar panels. Don't typically care what brand it is, but we want to know what the wattage is, because that can dictate what size solar array you have out in your field. If you have 20 panels and they're rated at 300 versus 425, that's a big difference. So we just want to know what kind of material you're using. Same with the inverter, what converts it over and phases it together and so that it can be backfed on our lines. So just want to look at the specifications of the equipment. All right, so let's get into what does it actually look like in the field. So this is just one example. There's many different ways of wiring it up. This is an outdoor application on there. You can see there's 3 main components that we look at on it besides the solar panels. So the first one is your inverter. That's basically what inverts it from AC to DC and makes it more usable power and phases it into our grid. So one thing that a lot of people don't realize is if you don't get power from the utility, okay, these are not a generator. This is not a battery backup system. This is not a generator system. So you actually have to have power to produce power. Okay? You can't just take two wires and stick them together and expect them to phase together. That's what this inverter will do. It keeps everything, the sine waves all equal. It keeps everything solid so that everything works in harmony. If you don't have that, you just got a big arc. Okay, so that's what this little box here does. It keeps everything stable. It actually is more of a monitoring system for your entire system. You can see what the DC voltage is compared to what the AC voltage is coming out. If you want to get more technical, we can talk more. The next piece of the device that we actually really are concerned about and is very important to us is a service disconnect right next to our meter. So in this application, you got the inverter, you got the disconnect, then the meter base. But we really want that service disconnect within viewable distance, within 6 foot of that meter. Now, for several reasons. So that service disconnect, so I'm going to jump ahead here. So let's look at this labeling. Labeling is very important. We want to know exactly what everything is. So this label over here just pretty much is the same, no, this label here is the same label that's on the disconnect. And when you look at the meter, it's saying that there's dual sources, there's another source of power. If there is ever a fire, there's a disconnect down below that meter that the fire department can shut it off. But will they know that there's also a solar panel? If there is an outage, our linemen will go through and they'll actually throw that disconnect on there and pull the meter. We'll do some safety functions. But George talked about liability. And when you do have these solar fields out there, you are taking some risk. If your inverter does not shut down when you lose power, you do not want to be producing power out of the lines. Let's say there's a vehicle accident and the power is down, the power lines are on the ground. Now, our outage, our breakers open up, so people assume that it's dead. Our guys never assume anything's dead. They take safety measures just to combat that so that they don't have any issues. But you're taking a risk if your solar panels do not disconnect from the system. A transformer is a transformer. It's stupid. There's no electronics to it. It doesn't care what direction electricity is flowing through it. So usually power comes in off the primary lines, and that's 72,000 volts. And we transform it down to 120 to 240. Well, a transformer doesn't care what direction the power is going to. Your solar panels can produce 120, 240. It'll go through the transformer. It'll step it up to 7,200 volts. It doesn't care. So that's why we actually take some measures as far as inspections to make sure that your system is working properly. So if there's an outage, it needs to shut itself off. So that's the liability that you're taking. So if there is an issue or an accident and you're putting voltage out there and someone gets hurt, you are liable. Okay? Just be clear on that. So service disconnect, that's another way of turning the power off if we ever need to, and or if the fire department or the public, if you have any issues, you want to service it, you can also disconnect it there. So when we go out for the inspections, what we're actually going to be looking at is we're going to count the solar panels. We want to know how many panels you have versus the application so that everything is installed properly into what you apply for. Also, we want to look at the wattage of the panels. So, because each panel, solar panels, they all look alike. They don't make them red, blue, they're all pretty much the same color. So, the difference is the wattage. The wattage can range by 100 watts per panel, and you don't even know what it is. We will look at these ratings of what you have installed. And also we want to check if your inverter is hooked up. So when we're out there, we're going to see that the inverter is producing electricity from the solar rays, and we want to see that it's backfeeding. So when we do our inspections, we're not going to go out on a time like now where it's kind of dusk We want that thing to actually be producing so we can make sure that it disconnects it. All right, so in this inspection process that we'll do is we will look at the inverter, get it running, make sure it's producing. Our meter tech or myself, what we'll do is we'll simulate an outage, we'll pull the meter itself and put a voltage meter on it, and then we will disconnect the service. And what we're actually looking for is making sure that this system disconnects on there. Very important. The whole safety is a big culture for us. So it's a big concern. So that's one of the key things that we're actually checking on your solar array before we actually put it in commission. All right, so here's a quick video. I don't know if you're going to see it very well, but when you get a net billing meter from us, when we put that on there, there's a lot of questions on which register is the solar field producing onto it. So we actually have, it's called a dual register meter. So we have a delivered and a receive on it. So you got to remember, this meter is owned by Paulding Putnam. So it's Paulding Putnam right on the meter. So from that, we receive kilowatts from you. That's the receive on there. So you'll see it says RC. Delivered is what we delivered to you. So a lot of people get that mixed up. Delivered and receive on there. So just keep that in mind. But it will flash delivered, receive, and I don't think this is going to look very good, but you can see right in this corner, DL means delivered, RC is what is been received to us. So that's what the solar arrays have produced. And also in this one, it's hard to see, but you can see that the dial is moving backwards. Shows the flow of electricity. So at this current moment, when this video is taken, those solar arrays were put back onto our system. Okay? If you want more information, you can always visit our website. One of the reasons why we're having this session, this meeting, is, we have nothing to hide. We have a bunch of data. Let us help you with your data, and maybe we can match with what we have out here on our panels, and help you make a good decision. Not saying if you want to do it or not, it doesn't bother us at all. But we just want you to make a solid decision for yourself.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight. We sure appreciate you coming out and being part of this, and thanks Peter and Steve.